Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. And today, listeners, we're going to be going over my experience anyway at Ontario, since Dan wasn't fortunate enough to be there. And, well, maybe unfortunate enough to be there, depending on your perspective. But he'll get into that. And we'll go over kind of the results of that tournament as well, and all the cool things that went down there. And yeah, that's going to be the episode today. Before we get into that, though, Dan, I've seen a lot of people floating hot takes around in the Grand Archive world, and I've got a hot take I want to share with the class as well. But I think I also asked you to prepare one. So
yes,
I'm going to have you share yours first, because I think mine's going to be, at the very least, like pretty fun and a nice way to kind of transition. So we'll let you go first.
Okay. I haven't heard your hot take. And when you asked me for this, I was just worried because of how much we talk about the game that we would both come up with the same hot take. So
no, I guarantee you mine is, that's the reason I wanted to come up with it, because I knew we weren't going to have the same one. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's this is an interesting thing to think about. I don't try to usually deliberately have hot takes on things. I just have takes, and then they're whatever temperature they end up being. So the take I think some people will find fairly hot is that I don't think fire is the best element in the game. And I think that is not something that is commonly said. Because if you look at the results of most tournaments, fire is usually at least half of the top 8, if not more. And it's very easy to point to a lot of examples. Feel free to do it in the comments of events where fire did a lot of work. We played fire decks at Houston, all of us, and fire is the generally the most represented element in these events. I mean, I was just looking at your Ontario meta sheet, and it's easily fire that beats Steelers massively, which naturally lends to it making the top cut, because some amount of those just hit good matchups, make, play out well. Fire's great. I'm not saying it's bad, but but I think fire is the element that is the most clear to how to play it. It's got sort of the most defined, accessible sort of game plan, whereas wind and water are both more meta dependent sometimes, they work. You need to build your deck around answering particular things in a particular way often, where fire is just kind of fast and proactive. So I think fire was always going to be the element that just did really well right out the gate. Because people have to figure out how to work wind and water decks. We've seen some incredible wind and water decks being built over time. And I think it's just like a slow shift that, and some of it's cards coming in that are good. Like water did have trouble without Fractured Crown. Fractured Crown introduced multiple cards for water that really gave it some play. So I don't think they were like all even from the start. In set 1, fire might have just been the best. It's possible.
I mean, was it before the level up rules change even? I think like wind was up there.
Yeah, no, wind was quite competitive in your set 1 meta. I mean, both fire and wind were kind of just 50-50. But yeah, I mean, I think these days there are a lot of arguments for other elements that have some extremely powerful plays, that have some proactive plays now as well, but have way better reactive plays. And I think a lot of very good players will generally be playing like wind and water decks because they have a little more control over the game plan and a little more responsiveness to the opponent, which is why I still play fire. But that's that's another. So that's my take. Fire is not the best element.
Excellent take. I admit I was worried you were going to come in with like a lukewarm take, but this is appropriately hot for what we required here. So excellent work. Thank you.
Yes.
No, I agree with it. I do think that fire is not the best element currently. I think water is at the moment. It's just there's so many sick reactive plays in water, and you have so much floating memory. So like it's a lot easier to just generate card advantage through the course of playing the game instead of having to play cards specifically to generate that card advantage. So it's just like so much fun to play right now. There's so many cool things. You can just like burst to 3 with a scepter out. You can like fracturize people's like swords and your own nullifying lantern and just ruin people's day. It's fun stuff. I'm a big fan.
There are a lot of plays. I mean, I think water is above wind right now.
Oh yeah.
But I think wind also is it will have a niche that it'll fill once we kind of get the meta to settle a little more.
Yeah.
But water just there are so many decks where with the right water build you just shut them down. And it's very difficult for them to get anywhere. Mostly fire decks, right? So, water's putting out the fire pretty well.
Yes, yeah, and fire's just it's very straightforward. Anyway, my hot take is that the fire CSR card from Alchemical Revolution should not have been Crimson Tier, but it should have been instead Inzali Unshackled Blaze.
What? Okay, that was blazing hot.
Yeah.
You didn't even bother to say Rococo?
No. Listen, that's a cold take. That's such a cold take.
Yeah, well, it's sure.
Rococo, yeah, good CSR, absolutely. Like it's too obvious, it's too out there. Everybody knows it. It's Inzali. Inzali, this art is beautiful and dynamic. Hopefully, Dan is nice enough to edit this podcast to get the image up. Listeners, please go find the image online so you can check this out because it's great. She's like this cleric automaton. She's got this staff with like a orb of fire encased in like these copper bands, and there's just flames swirling around her, and she's like got this just like really like commanding pose and mood on her face. It's excellent art, and I've been thinking about this for like the past 2 days. As I've been like just kind of drooling over some of the CSR arts because they're just beautiful in this game. But man, this should have been it. This should have been the CSR.
Artwork is by Gule also, who did Rococo as well.
Yep. So yeah, actually, I mean, my trip to Ontario is a little bit what inspired this too. With Gule at the artist booth. There's excellent artists, great stuff going on. They did this. They did Shimmercloak Assassin, Rococo. Actually, yeah. Also, hot take: Inzali might be the better Gaiul art than Rococo. I'm sorry, Rococo fans.
Wow.
But I'll die on this hill. Actually, it's so good.
Wow.
I'm huge Inzali stan right now.
Have you been playing an Inzali deck or something?
No. I'm actually kind of sad because I can't play that card because I haven't been playing any Arasana builds or any Vanitas builds or anything yet. And I'll get there eventually, but yeah, this is on my list for sure. But this should have been the CSR. This would look so good textured and full art. Ugh.
After all of our starter deck games, do you just refuse to play Arasana? Like you need like a washout period before you can look at her again.
Yeah, I need to go to like rehab or something first. Yeah.
Arasana rehab.
Yes.
I think you'll meet Lineage Break Cam there too, actually.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Good. But yeah, those are our hot takes, folks. Do with them what you will. I hope they provide a little bit of enjoyment for you. But yeah, we'll move on to kind of the meat and potatoes of the podcast here. If you will allow me my nice Midwestern idiom here. So
before we do that though, Taylor, no, I cannot allow you to get to the meat and potatoes yet.
We have to have our veggies. You got to have our peas.
Yep, we have to have our peas first. And our peas, dear listeners, are just a reminder about how you can support Main Deck and our Main Deck family of podcasts. If you do enjoy listening to Recollection Step and our other podcasts, there are a couple ways you can support us. Of course, on all of our videos, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't for some reason done that yet. Would greatly appreciate that. That super helps us just get found and spread the word about Grand Archive and these other games that we love. As well as rating us on on your favorite podcast platform. You listen to us on Spotify or iTunes. Little 5-star, boom, helps a lot. Thank you so much for everyone who's done ratings and who likes the videos. People who I was talking to Silidar about this, and he confirmed that people who like our podcasts actually have higher CSR hit rates in boxes. So,
yep. Confirmed.
That's, do with that what you will, of course. But the other way you can support us is if you are not hitting all the CSRs and you do need to buy some cards on TCG Player, you can use our affiliate link, which is down in the description below. And you can use that when you're shopping. You get the same rate. You don't pay anything extra, but a little bit of it gets kicked back to us. So if you're out there, you're buying your set of CSR Crimson Tiers or something because you're a big Xander stan and you just want to have all those beautiful Crimson Tiers, you why not toss a little our way? Just like put the affiliate link instead of just going to tcgplayer.com. You click that link in the description below, or go to bit.ly/shoptcgs, and then you'll help us out too. And it's greatly appreciated when people do that. All that support's really awesome. So thank you so much for your support, everyone. Now, the meat and potatoes. Now that we've finished our yucky peas.
Yes. Yeah. So it's 2 weeks ago now, actually. I think Ascent Ontario happened out in Ontario, California, not Canada.
Not Canada.
And it was an awesome event. I went down with a couple other, actually, no, I shouldn't say couple. It was like 5 other people from the area and the Main Deck crew and stuff. And we got down there and just tested out some games a couple days beforehand. Everybody got ready for the event and had a great time. Dan was not there, unfortunately, as he had prior commitments for a really cool Star Wars Unlimited creator event that you can go check out the Main Deck podcast family podcast, Galactic Ambition, if you want to hear more about that. But we're not going to go into that now.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, it was great. We stayed at the Residence Inn, which is like also right across the street from the convention center. So it was like pretty much as close as the linked hotel that Weebs had set up. But this was neat because they had like almost like apartments to rent out instead of hotel rooms. So it was like 6 of us just hanging out in this hotel, jamming games for a couple days beforehand. It wasn't a couple days. It was like mostly the Friday because we got in kind of late on Thursday. But anyway, it was awesome. It was really cool playing with the team. We watched a lot of people level up pretty quickly in the just jamming games for all day. Really kind of putting a lot of pieces together, as we didn't have a ton of time to kind of test beforehand and kind of get everybody wasn't really getting on the same page as far as what to play and stuff. It was almost a little last minute. But yeah, it was really cool to watch everybody like just figure their decks out and figure out how to play them and what they wanted to do and just feel pretty good going into the event.
When we go to these events, the events are always incredible, especially Grand Archives events. They're just spectacular every time, but it's almost more fun those like day or two before when the whole team just kind of gets together. I think those experiences are invaluable for people who are looking to play competitively, to like have a group of people where you can all sit down and you all can focus in on winning, how to win the games, how to win the event, sharing your tips and tricks. Like you said, watching people level up, just surrounding yourself by people who are all in that same mindset and focused on it. It's always a kind of an electric, an electricity in the air when you're doing that. And those are super fun.
Yep. Yeah, it was awesome. And it was interesting as I didn't really have anything to prepare for because I was judging the event at Ontario. So I wasn't competing. So I just really got to like really take more of a support role in kind of all of this instead of trying to figure out my own matchups and my own list. So I just had like a kind of a unique perspective I don't usually have around just watching everybody kind of get ready and kind of what goes into that. And I think it's helping me kind of get ready for Nats more now next weekend. So yeah, we'll get into our Nats prep here at some point because we're currently doing that now. I'm really looking forward to. We're going to do the same thing, get down like a day early and just jam games the day before and get ready. We'll talk about more on the next episode though, because this one's about Ontario. And so yeah, going into the event, I was judging it. One of like I think we had like 10 judges or so, which I think is actually kind of a lot for an event that size. It was 200 plus players, so that's like one judge per 20 players, which is, from what I know, a fairly good amount. But it was really, really, really nice for this event. Like it was super useful. There's a lot of us who don't have a lot of experience judging really large events. Like myself, I judge a lot of our local events for Grand Archive. I've judged our local Universus events, and I've judged like Star Championships for both of those, but I haven't really judged any like huge events. So it's really nice just having a lot of other people like to lean on for support and stuff. Let's see. There were some other judges who have quite a bit of judging experience, I think, too. So like it was just, we had a really good mix of people. But yeah, the extra staff was definitely very like helpful.
Similar to the preparation for the event, like just getting to be on the judge staff, and get to kind of work with people who have done this a bunch before at a higher level. Also a great like learning experience too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, this was my first time judging like an event that size. So it was super cool to get to sit down with people and just pick their brain and see what was going on and learn what they've learned. Going into it, we had like a judge session with Nog, one of the developers, one of Weeb's, and it was like a pretty good length meeting, just kind of all about like how to handle judge calls and what to expect and kind of like infractions and penalties and that kind of stuff. So that was awesome. Let's see. And then, yeah, just like day of was like a lot of fun judging the event. It was really neat. Just the amount of players is like, there's almost always somebody calling for a judge, which is great. So we were all really busy the whole time, going around answering everybody's questions. And it was super chill. Like everybody was like in a really good mood. Nobody was like upset about anything. We didn't have to like worry about any sort of bad sportsmanship or anything like that. Like it was just one of the most chill events you could ask for to judge. So that was fantastic. Just like everybody was super friendly. And like everybody who called for a judge was really just like looking for help, which was like the best part. Like even if you had to go through and like kind of like back up a game state or something, or like just explain a rules interaction or something like that, or like really anything, like just unwind a player mistake somehow, or give a warning even, or whatever it was. Like it was all just like very like friendly for the most part. Like
it was like people looking to make sure the game is both on both sides, looking just to make sure the game is working correctly and not people just like trying to get infractions on their opponents or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. There was no rule sharking or anything like that. Like I didn't hear about anybody coming up and being like just trying to get judges over to give their opponent a game loss, or like, like a, like get them a disadvantage or anything like that. Everybody was like just very good sports about everything. It was awesome. So it was just a really good time. I had a really good experience judging the event. Let's see. And then, yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was saying, I just want to use this as another reminder, like, again, especially since we're going into Nats. Nats is, I would imagine, is going to have like a slightly more competitively skewed player base than Ascent will. But the reminder is always useful that whenever you see anything going wrong in your game, or like you're just unsure about something, or you've got a question or anything like that, just raise your hand, yell for a judge. They'll come over, they'll help you out. They're there to like help make sure everybody's having a good time, and also make sure the game is being played correctly. Like they're not there to like punish anybody or anything like that. So just like judges are your friends.
I think every time this sort of discussion comes up, I give the anecdote because I've seen it. I can't even apply it to a specific game anymore because I've seen it in basically every game that I've played, but or every game that I've judged where I've been directly interfacing with players. I have a player who comes up to me at some point during a larger event later on in the event and says, like, tells me a story about how earlier in that event they thought something was being played wrong, but they just thought, whatever. Then they lost the game because of it, and then they found out later that it was being played wrong, and they wish they had just called a judge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's always so weird to me because it's like, having judged quite a bit as well, there's no cost. It's like you're not. It's not like when you call a judge, the judge is like, "Oh, I gotta go do the thing I'm here to do again." It's like the
judges like, "Oh, I get to go answer a question." Excellent. Like,
yeah. Like a lot of the time, it's like, "Oh, cool, something to do." Like something, or a way I can. The way I like to phrase it to people is that people. This isn't like the judging is not like our job that we like our 9 to 5 that we're just kind of like trying to, we got to pay the bills, so we got to do it. The people who are there spending their weekend judging are generally doing it because they wanted to judge the event. 99% of judges are probably just like, yeah, I really like helping people. I like teaching people. I like doing this. So when you choose to not call a judge because you think, oh, it'll be fine, or they're probably right, like, I don't know, you're not only sometimes screwing yourself over, but you're actively preventing a judge from getting to do something they want to do right
Exactly,
now. You're like attacking that judge directly. Like, no, let him have fun. Call for the judge. Everyone's going to have a better time if you do that.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes like the judge even gets lucky and they learn something. Like a lot of these players are very knowledgeable, right? So, don't be afraid to be like, "Hey, judge, I think that works this way." Like worst case scenario, you can appeal to the head judge or whatever, right? And they can figure it out. But even in day 2, I was judging the side event, and I had gotten a judge call about how like Tony's level 3 interacts with sword tokens so Tonera's creations will. He can generate like 3/1 sword tokens instead of whatever normal token you generate, or not generate, summon, excuse me.
Yeah, use the right term.
Yeah. And there's a lot of Neos cards that will generate automaton tokens with a buff counter. Well, those swords will come in with a buff counter, and those buff counters actually like interact with swords really well, where they give the swords +1 power, which I didn't realize at the time. And so in the middle of that judge call, I was looking up the rules, like confirm, oh, that is actually how it works. So this is awesome. So just a great opportunity to continue to kind of like grow your great game knowledge as well, being a judge. But yeah, I mean, day 1 went off really, really well. Day 2, we had some bigger side events going on, or I guess one big side event going on and a bunch of other smaller ones. So we kind of broke the judge staff up a little bit in between those and the main event. And yeah, I spent most of my day with the side event, just because it was pretty chill, and we didn't really need to float judges around too much. So it was me and Ein, and I think there was 1 or 2 other judges that were hanging out judging the side event, and that was a really cool time. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of most of my experience. It was a lot of just like kind of running around and answering questions and like having a really good time, being on my feet for like most of the day and hanging out with all the judge staff. And yeah, it was awesome. It was just really cool being surrounded by so many people that were like really just really, really passionate about the game. Not even the players, just like all the staff there were very excited to hang out and just be part of Grand Archive and part of the community and just contribute in any way they can. Even if they like didn't think they were very competitive, or if they just like, they enjoy the game how they want to enjoy the game. And it was really cool to see, like as someone who mostly like plays games for the most part and just kind of like, chips in to be like a local judge. It was neat to see kind of everybody else just gathering for this event just because they think everybody here is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. How did do you want to talk about how some of our other teammates did in the events?
Yeah, yes, very much so. So we had, I'll start with the highlight, which is that our teammate Kyle got 12th in the event with a Merlin list running Erupting Rhapsody and Ember Song, very similar to what we ran in Houston. So that was really cool. Deck is still awesome.
One win away from top, and his losses were all to True Champion Gaming.
They were all to True Champion Gaming. He lost once to Isaac and twice to Caben.
And he picked up a game. Was it in each match he picked up one game? It wasn't a clean. It was like a 2-1, or maybe two of them or something.
I want to say that is correct. Yeah, I mean he didn't just get stomped or anything like that. He played competitively. Obviously, like he took 12th right. So
yeah,
that
and
was
I mean
awesome.
that matchup is not favorable for his deck.
No, not at
So
all.
it was we were very proud of Kyle for a good meta call, a good deck. I mean, obviously a good meta call considering who won as well.
Yep.
Not to at all discount Matt Garcia's skill with the deck either, but you know, Kyle has been with us working on these play patterns and everything for a while too, and we're just very proud that if he had just had like one match different or cards came up a little different in one of those games against the True Champ boys, then he would have been top 8 too.
Yes. Yeah, let me look up some of the other records. I forget exactly where some of our other teammates landed. Kyle was the only one to make day 2, unfortunately. So, a repeat of Houston, where Dan was the only one to make day 2.
There were some very close to day 2s at Houston as well.
There were, yeah. I think we had a 5-3, and then we had some 4Xs in there as well. So like a lot of people just really getting close. And again, you could tell a lot of people just really kind of like leveled up from that event as well. Mitch and Tony both played a water Tony list, if I'm remembering correctly. Or Tony might have played Merlin. I forget. Tony played Merlin. Yeah, 100%.
I don't remember what everyone landed.
You weren't there.
On.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm asking you.
I don't know.
But anyway, so I think they were both pretty happy with their play, but like the decks, I think they would have picked a little differently. Tony played a Prismatic Merlin specifically, if I'm remembering that correctly. And I think that was just kind of rough into all the aggro in the room. And then Mitch was playing Water Tony, which was more of a kind of like a mid-rangey control-y deck that had a Neos endgame with Amorphous Strike and Summon Sentinels. And it played really well into the ally decks, but then it had just a rough Merlin matchup. So
sure, kind of the opposite problem.
Exactly. Like, yeah, when half the room is like Merlin and half the room is aggro, like if you don't have like a decent game against both of those, you're just going to have a rough day regardless.
Yeah.
And they just, like we're just kind of just not quite there, unfortunately, with their lists. And then Josh was playing Fire Xander aggro and did really well with that. I think he was like I think was doing the best out of everybody besides Kyle. So that was pretty sweet to see.
Yeah, that's great. Josh, you know, in our team, Josh is the owner of our LGS as well. So I like pointing that out to people because a lot of people's experience with LGSs is that they begrudgingly, you know, kind of order in stuff and put events on the schedule, like what, you know, kind of the bare minimum or whatever. But Josh is in the trenches in everything. Josh is if you haven't met him, I mean he's an awesome guy, incredible dude, and came out with us to Houston, took 5th place in the Path of Silver, then wanted to play this. There wasn't a Path of Silver. I mean, he probably would have been silver if they had one at Ontario, but came out to Ontario just to play because it's Xander's time now, and he's like a massive Xander fan, like the biggest Xander fan in the world. So he's like so stoked. He's like, as soon as some of the spoilers started coming out for Alchemical, he's like, I'm playing Xander again. Like it's Xander time. He's so excited. Yep. So yeah, it's really fun to see him start to pick up some more chops for higher level play as well. But he's just so supportive of the game. It's awesome.
I mean, he really is like all in too. Like his deck is blinged out. Like he's a huge Xander. Like in general, he plays like the ninja or assassin archetype in whatever game he's playing. Like he plays a lot of Legacy and Magic the Gathering as well, and he plays blue black ninjas in that. So he definitely has found his niche. And yeah, his deck just looks insane. He's got like the Xander 1-3 CUR. And he's got like Crimson Tier CSRs and just he's got everything kind of
Gawain CSRs, and he needs now. He needs those Square Live collab cards. We need to get him like the
the
Well,
cremation
I'm trying to
ritual.
remember what is list. Does he have cremation in there? I can't remember now.
I think at this point we had cut
I think
it.
we've cut it.
I think he played a couple in Ontario, and then for the side event, I think he moved them to Creative Shocks.
Okay.
But CPR Creative Shocks, yeah. I mean, but anyway,
Yep.
that's all. That's all just to say, like, he's like, this is a shop owner, like you said, that is very much supportive of the game. Like these people wouldn't like put this much time and effort into acquiring these really cool cards if they weren't like, hey, this is going to be a sick game that I'm going to play for a while, or that they didn't believe in it, they they wouldn't bother, right?
Yep.
So like clearly, like, you just kind of, again, it's just like Grand Archive is in a state where it's got a lot of potential and is growing pretty slowly, and it might not be growing as quickly as people want to, but it's growing very steadily as well. It's a really
I think
good.
that's the key, is that
Mhm.
like again, I've said this before, but it's just like I like checking in, I guess, on it as I continue. I'm the admin on the Facebook group and an admin on the Facebook sales group as well,
Mhm.
and I get to monitor everything that's kind of happening in both. And the Facebook group is just like steady growth day after day. We're getting a number of new people joining, um, people posting their events, people asking questions. The sales group, I see people posting collections for sale, and like that happens in every game. But what's important, so like you can't monitor that and get actual data points from it.
Mhm.
What I do see is I see people posting collections for sale, and then immediately several posts of people buying them,
Mhm.
which is like that's where that's an actual useful piece of data. Is like it's when a game's dying, people are putting collections up for sale, and nobody's buying them,
Exactly.
right? So yeah, it's cool. It's
Mhm.
steady growth because Weebs makes good decisions and
Mhm.
is pushing out a good product and a good game.
Yep. Yes. But yeah, anyway, back to our team after our fun little, we love
Yes.
to do our little, hey, it's all good. But anyway,
Yeah.
uh, I think everybody who didn't make day two played in the side event in day two, which was actually like pretty competitive. It ended up being a 7 round event because we ended up with like 65 or 66 players in it. Like, we were just over like the 6 round cap. Um, so like it ended up being like a pretty good grueling event as well. And everybody, I think, except for one person, ended up with 5 wins or more in the event. Um,
Nice.
Maybe four. I forget exactly. Most people, I think, in our group ended up with like 5 wins. So, and like they did really well. It was really cool. And this is where Tony switched from Merlin to Water Tenaris. And he's playing that in day two, and they made some changes. Him and Mitch, I think, made some changes and went a lot better. And there were also just like less Merlins in the event too,
Hmm.
so like that helped. But yeah, overall, like I think everybody had a really good time. I think everybody played really well and really competitively. I'm really happy with how everybody did.
Didn't we
So it was.
have someone took like third or something? Devin or Tony, I thought
Oh
took.
yeah, duh. Oh my gosh,
Come on
I'm
now.
dropping the ball here. Thanks, Dan. Tony took third. Yeah,
Tony did. Okay.
Tony, and yeah, he took third because he walked away with 2 DOA first dead boxes from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's
So no.
kind of like at Houston. Adam from our team took won the side event
Yeah. Yep.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
and then this time we had Tony who took third in it. So
Yes.
really
Yep.
really good. I'm happy about our main deck team and the growth and the performance that everyone's
Mm-hmm.
having. It's it's just really great to see when we get this group of people together and they all get to work together and perform.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's a shame that there's only going to be, I think, like 4 or 5 of us or so in Houston for nationals, because
Yeah.
I think we're at a point, like it feels really good. I feel like we're about to pop off here. So, um, we're on a roll at the moment.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah. We'll
we're not
see.
on as much of a roll as some other teams, but we'll get to that.
We're not the true champions. We're the fake champions.
Exactly. Yeah. We're the scrub out champions, the bubble
We're
out champions.
we're the bubble out
Yeah.
champions. Bubble out. Actually, I'm changing the name of the channel to Bubble Out Champion Gaming.
Yeah. There we go. But yeah, I mean, it was an awesome event. It was a lot of fun. Everybody who played had fun. I had an awesome time as a judge. So, 10 out of 10 would recommend, if you're at all interested in going to an Ascent event for Grand Archive, to check it out. They are a ton of fun. But I mean, yeah, check out the one in Vegas. It's gonna be a great time in May.
Mm-hmm.
So
We'll be there.
yes, we will. But yeah, moving on. So we'll talk kind of like results here, and metagame. Overall, it was like a super healthy metagame kind of going into the event. Like day one had a really good spread of decks. It looked like nothing really was like kind of considered far and away the best deck you could bring to the event. Fire Merlin obviously had like a huge showing because it was kind of like the default deck for a long time. It still kind of is, especially like so new into the format, where people didn't really know what to play. Like again, this was only like 2 weeks after release of ALC, so like not a lot of time to kind of figure out what the new tech was and what decks were going to pop out. So like Merlin's always kind of like a good safe fallback with kind of an auto win button in the late game with Fireball and just some good plans overall. But yeah, I mean, a quarter of the room was Fire Merlin. And then there was actually a lot of like Fire Xander decks, and I don't know what exactly the split was between like aggro Xander decks and the Serene Luxem deck that's been popping up. But I would really like to know that actually because they're so different decks. Like they're just completely opposite
They're
ends
totally
of the spectrum.
different. Like it's not as different, but in the Fire Merlin count, I believe that includes Fire Hybrid decks as well.
Yeah.
And those are still, like those have different matchup charts than each other as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think actually most of them were Fire Hybrid. Based off of day 2 conversion. And I think that's kind of what people are deciding is the better build at the moment. You just have better game into the ally builds, which are very popular right now. Because after Fire Xander and Fire Merlin, it was just a lot of like ally builds. You had a lot of Fire Diana, Wind Lorraine, Water Tony, Water Diana, Wind Tony. There were some Fire Rise that snuck in there, but then after that, there's some more ally builds with Fire Tony and the Water Lorraine builds that True Champion Gaming ran.
And 3 brave souls playing Water Arisana. Yes. I'm so proud of you all for going for it.
Absolutely. Braver souls than me, that's for sure.
Way braver than Taylor.
I'm a coward. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was just like, it's a really healthy spread. Wind was pretty underrepresented, but like it was awesome to see so many water decks popping up. They got a lot of really good tools in ALC. And then just talking about like day 2 conversions, like a lot of those water decks converted really, really well.
Yes.
Excuse me. So like Water Diana, there was 12 of those decks in the tournament out of like 200, and 4 of those 12 converted. Let's see. I think I have one of my numbers incorrect here. Around Water Tony. Let me double check that quick.
Water Tony had
no,
it was 15 and no, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so yeah, there was only one Water Tony that converted out of 15, and that one actually top aided. And that one I think was the better build for the day. Just that one is set up more as an ally build than like the Neo's top end that's got kind of the slower, more interactive shell. Maybe not more interactive, just slower, kind of like dirtly shell. Maybe is a better way to put it. With like shield mates and wave rider protectors that just have like really, really good taunt units, but not like a lot of aggressive units. And then the Fire Xander lists converted really well as well. Both Luxem and Aggro had really good showings. And so it was a really good day to be playing aggressive decks. And then of course, like, yeah, True Champion Gaming, their Water Lorraine list, I think there was 3 of them playing it. And then there was one other Water Lorraine that I don't think was part of their team.
This conversion rate's insane.
But yeah, I mean, two of 3 TCG players converted on Water Lorraine. And then the other Roomba playing Water Crux Lorraine also day 2'd with it. And yeah,
3 out of 4 made it to day 2, and then one of those made it to top 8, but still.
Yeah, I mean, it was just excellent showing there. Again, like great meta read, showing what power of like these interactive ally decks and what they can do, especially with the burst of Scepter of Lumina.
Yeah, I mean, I think Scepter of Lumina is an insane card. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the combination of that I had the pleasure. I've been playing some Water Lorraine lately too, and I really the deck's pretty wild. It's the combination of that, and then just simply it does the same thing that the Wind Lorraine deck does, where it puts some threat down and then it holds some interaction up. Um, but the interaction that you have in Water is just so soul crushing against some of the decks that were performing well.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like holding up a Zephyr is one thing. Holding up a Frostbind and a song, and like when you have a hand that's like Frostbind, Song of Frost, Fracturized, those are the three cards you hold up, which is something that happens.
It's very
not
common,
infrequently
actually.
in that
Yeah.
deck. And like you have some threat down, and those three cards in your hand, it's like what can they actually do right now? Like
Mhm.
you have a counter to just about anything that would threaten you, especially considering some of those threats you put down are like Korhazi Trappers that have more stuff that they can do to interact with the opponent.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, it was a really good day for these ally decks, especially the water ones. I mean, Merlin also converted at like a 25% rate, which I think is actually like really impressive considering how many Merlins showed up.
Yeah.
Like that, the deck still has legs, still very powerful deck.
As you
Like,
noted, it's mostly hybrid though,
yeah, hmm
right? And like
yeah,
it's that flexibility and that power, the thing we've been talking about since Houston.
hmm
That flexibility of just being able to tackle anything
yep,
really, and just going the correct route for each game.
yep, yeah. Just being able to get in there, decide if you need to go to Lorraine and sweep, or if you can get up to Merlin and grind out a game that way. Like, and even if like you get to do that in each individual game too. Like you have Lorraine and the sweep in there mostly for the ally decks, right? But like some games against ally decks, you're just going to go to Merlin still, depending on how the game is
Yep.
flowing. Like oftentimes going to Lorraine, you'll take out a couple allies with the sweep, but then you don't really have a plan after that to actually win the game. But if there's only a couple allies out, you can also just go to Merlin because they're probably not pressuring you as much, um, and win the game that way too. So you just have so much flexibility.
This
Um,
is what I was getting at with my hot take in the beginning is
mhm,
that decks, I mean, elements sometimes lean towards one way of playing or another, but because this is a fire deck,
mhm,
but in general, decks that afford the player greater agency in how their game plays out um, tend to be favored by players who are playing into a known meta,
oh yeah,
um, and that players who are playing at a high level and playing into a known meta can then have all sorts of control over how their game goes each time. And the advantage of hybrid is just that those multiple routes, that added control over every game. You don't sit down with hybrid and go, it's a Xander deck, so I go to Lorraine every time.
mhm.
It's it's based on your hand that you see. It's based on what they play. It's based on who they're playing. Um, that said, sometimes some players will take Fire Luxem Xander and XO the event all the way until they lose the finals.
No, that was Fire Aggro Xander.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant. Yeah. I looked at the wrong thing there. Yes. Fire Xander Aggro was the one
hmm
who lost the semifinals.
Yes.
I was looking at the chart wrong.
hmm
But that, I mean, there's something to say about
Oh yeah.
impressive, just one trick decks like that too.
hmm Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Fire Xander Aggro, I think like was actually the deck of the tournament. It was very very well positioned. Um, a lot of the bad matchups were mostly just like the Water Tenaris builds, the Neos ones, because they just had so much defense that it was hard, and so much health that it's hard for Xander to get through that. But like Xander can still like take down like a lot of like the Water Lorraine and the Water Dianas, and the Wind Lorraine, just kind of out of nowhere. Like you put up a ton of damage quickly in that deck. Um, Josh was like goldfishing it the Friday night before the tournament, and he was putting up like he was like goldfishing like 43 damage on turn 3 or something. It's like stupid like that with Poison Dagger and Rococo. Like you can get obscene totals when you're unhindered. Um,
Yes.
and I mean, obviously, like a lot of these decks have a lot of interaction, but if you're hitting that like just goldfishing, that means you probably are getting like a really good amount of damage into interaction too. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was an excellent meta call for the weekend.
And just like shout out to it was Sean Zhang who took that event or took that deck and exoed the whole thing all the way up to semifinals, and
Mm-hmm.
then unfortunately took the loss at that point.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if the deck of the tournament wasn't that fire aggro Xander deck, it was like these water ally builds for sure. We had a lot of different kind of flavors of that. Like we talked about True Champion Gaming on it already. Well, the Water Diana builds have the same ally base, and then there was the one Water Tony piloted by Violet that took 6th. And they kind of all have that like base of just really good allies, really good interaction. You've got things like Frosthorn Paladin, Snow Fairy, just that make things really impressive. Imperial Recruit has shown up to be a very strong force in the metagame, just as a 2/3 for 2 instead of the normal 2/3 for 3. And then Gildas obviously is still really good. So they have this core of those like really, really efficient allies, and then you've got really good interaction with Frostbind and Fracture Eyes, and now Freezing Hail has been seeing a lot more play as well.
Yes.
That was played a ton at the tournament. So you just have so many good spells and so many good allies and just lots of really good interaction. It's really hard for decks like Merlin to kind of keep up with that, even with all their flexibility, just due to the amount of pressure you're putting on them and the amount of ways you have to prevent them from punishing you for that. So yeah, just another excellent call. Actually, I want to point out Violet's list because this is a list to me that just says they've played a lot with the deck and figured out like what cards they need for what matchups and have figured out kind of some of these like correct ratios. Like cards like Lunette and Vaporjet Shieldbearer in my Tony builds, I was always including at like 4 ofs just because like they're so powerful. Snow Fairies as well, like I always wanted more rather than fewer. But Violet settled on like 2 for each of those cards. Which shows like they've had the time to go through and figure it out. They're good in some matchups, but like these aren't really cards you want to see into Merlin too much either, right? So just like some really smart deck building going on, I think. Same with like a lot of like the True Champion Gaming list. Like again, like they found the cards they wanted the most of at 4. They found some cards they want to see pretty often at 3, but they don't need to see like all of them all the time. Again, just like really good efficient deck building there. And then, I mean, overall, like I think just a really, really diverse day 2 still. Like it carried a lot of that same diversity from day 1. It doesn't look like there's a really clear cut best deck coming out of this. And yeah, I mean, overall, like just really, really great to see this right away off the bat with this new set meta. Really exciting to see how diverse it is. So
there were ultimately 7 distinct kind of archetypes in the top 8. Just two copies of Hybrid Merlin. Some of them, like there's clear similarities between the Water Lorraine, the Water Tony, the Water Diana.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly play their own ratios of things and have their own tricks and things that they do a little differently, but they're, often just based on some of the same kind of core concepts. But then you also have things like the Fire Luxem Xander, Fire Xander Aggro, totally different decks, completely different. The Erupting Merlin. I just like Matt. I haven't had the pleasure, I think, actually, of getting to meet Matt in person yet, but from everything I've been told, is an Erupting master, and has been doing reps and performing well with the deck. Erupting is. This is almost my hot take, Taylor. Actually, this is almost my hot take. I was thinking about Erupting, and like my hot take could be Erupting is not broken, because that is something that I think some people are quite fond of saying.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that's true. But the reason I couldn't make it my hot take is because I had this other side of my head that was saying Erupting is better than people think it is. It was like, which that maybe that like just as a hot take statement would have been, I think, a pretty funny statement to make.
That would have been a good statement.
But the reason I say that is because Erupting is a more I think a lot of people just hone in on these kind of like turbo Erupting decks that just like go to Rye 1-2 and then Erupting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think the best performance from Erupting has been in decks that use it as a tool in a toolbox of ways that you can. I mean, Erupting is a way to end the game, and it's also a way to clear a board of allies.
Yep.
And it's a more flexible card if you're willing to let it let yourself out of the box a little bit in how it can be applied. When playing in Houston again, I had games where I needed to use it to clear the board. And I had games where it just obviously just ended the game.
Mhm.
And it's the power actually comes from the flexibility. So that's where it's like it's not as broken as you think it is, because there's plenty of ways to fight it beating you. But it's also better than you think it is, because the flexibility is like the strength of it, ultimately. And I think Matt showed very well his just extremely flexible deck.
Mhm.
Um, and how to properly show off the power of that card. So a very different deck than the hybrid Merlins,
Yep.
that were in there also, because that focus on erupting usually changes your list
Oh yeah.
somewhat.
Well, I mean, I completely agree. Like, erupting is not broken, but it's also a much better card than people think it is. Because yeah, it's definitely got those dual uses. But I think it's really interesting how we have both. I think Matt's deck you would classify as just kind of like a race to erupting deck, just due to what else it's trying to do. Like, it has a lot of that flexibility because it's got like Innervate Furies. It's got ways to like control the board. But I mean, it's also running like 4 fire momentums, and it's just like it's got ways to just kill you, right? Like,
Yep.
like if you let the game go, if you don't pressure this deck too like enough, they'll be like, okay, it's time to finish the game now. Bye. See you next round.
I think
Like,
the Innervate was a particularly clever innovation in the
mhm.
list, though. Because when you're going to just win the game with erupting, it doesn't really matter what level you're on.
Yep.
So the using it as healing and board clear as you were just kind of biding your time a little bit, to build up to that erupting win is a pretty sick play.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and like, yeah, he's got both Lorraine and Rye level 1 included, right? Just so you kind of have the flexibility even to be at level 1, still get the mage class bonus of Fireball to have it cost 2, but then still use like Ember Song Erupting Fireball to kill the opponent. Like, it's just
Yep.
really well put together list. I mean, it's all 4-ofs, but it's all like really distinct 4-ofs that you want to see very often, as often as you can. Like, it's clearly put together really well. And then our teammate Kyle, his deck is kind of like on the other end of that, right? Like, he's using Erupting Rhapsody a lot more as like that board clear tool, where he's not really all in on erupting at all, really. There's 21 non-fire cards in this list compared to the 8 of Matt's.
Yep.
So like, you're just not all in at all on this. But again, like, it's just so good in that late game, right? Like, even with a lantern out, late game Merlin hits really, really large erupting rhapsodies, just due to her level counters. So you still have to respect that threat, even if you can lantern. What I'm really curious about is how well both of these deck archetypes are going to do. Both kind of like this mono erupting rhapsody, maybe is the way to put it, where you're leaning on erupting rhapsody and fiery momentums to kill your opponent pretty quickly, or this kind of hybrid triple threat Merlin where you've got your normal Merlin game plan, and then you just substitute Erupting Rhapsody in as some board clear. I'm interested to see how well they perform now that Crystal of Empowerment is banned, because I think both of those decks lean on that card quite a bit for the erupting kill. So I don't know if that like is going to really how much it'll affect these decks moving forward. Like, if they still really need it, or if like that one turn now is just going to be like too much. Like, they really needed that extra boost from Crystal to get there, and they're not going to be quite fast enough now. It'll be interesting to see moving forward what happens. But I think a lot of Kyle's and Matt's success too was just like due to people they weren't respecting erupting going to this tournament at all.
Yep.
There's very few main deck lanterns, and a lot of them are like pretty easily just like removed because they're all in fire, so you can't like protect the lantern very well. You just play it out there, and then you're like, I hope this is enough to stop you, and then they play a Spurn to Ash or a Disintegrate or something, and then your lantern goes away, and you lose to erupting. But
I think
Matt,
a lot of people point to, like, just fracturize the lantern in response, and that solves all the problems.
mm-hmm.
And the erupting player knows that.
Yeah,
Right. It's like
mm-hmm.
it's actually kind of hard for when it's an erupting player who knows what they're doing. It's kind of hard to pull that on them. And if you ever do, it's often they knew you were going to, and it was like a calculated play of some kind. That's just getting your hand emptied so they can do something else. And ultimately, like again, Merlin, yeah, like doesn't need the fire cards in the graveyard. To end water, if water is going too slow, then I mean that was in Houston. Water was an easy matchup, but we didn't have Scepter, and we didn't have the ally list that's putting more pressure on now. As we saw, that was what Kyle had trouble with.
Yes.
So a little different than it was then, but it's still not just the like, well, just put a lantern, fracturize it, then erupting's not a problem. That's not exactly true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, holding up that fracturize every turn for, to protect your lantern is a real cost. Like, as an ally deck against these erupting decks, you want to beat down as fast as you can. But if you're holding up fracturize every turn, you can't play 2 allies a turn, and you're just going to be slower than because of it. You're like significantly slower, actually, because 4 power is a lot more than 2. So yeah, I mean, like a lot of these decks they had like the allies, they had the disruption and fracturize, and then they had ways to kind of burst Merlin down. I think saw a lot of that success. Because like, yeah, in Houston without Scepter of Lumina, like you could kind of get around a lot of it. And like a lot of those win decks just really kind of had no play because they just didn't have a good like way to finish the game fast enough. Even with Gildas and Squirrels and Ace and Protector, it still wasn't quite enough there. And they just also didn't have quite as many good ways to protect their lantern. You can obviously like Zephyr it, but that's almost the same thing as just letting it get spurned, because then it's probably a kill turn anyway. So, yeah. So really, a lot of it is just like the tournament just did not like respect erupting at all, especially like all of these Merlin lists, right? Like none of these Merlin lists are playing main deck lantern. None of these Merlin lists can pressure the erupting decks fast enough to actually like steal a game from them. Like you're in for a really bad time as a Merlin player not playing erupting into an erupting Merlin player.
So we've talked a lot about not respecting erupting, and erupting being something that is you can play into and is played around. So what if you're playing erupting, Taylor, what do you not want to see from your opponent? Like how do you actually throw a wrench and interact with erupting? Do you want to? Well, we can go both talk about it. I just thought I would start with you.
I don't want to see. I really just do not want to see the lightning fast aggressive aggro decks. Like Fire Aggro Xander is by far your worst nightmare. You have no interaction for them, and they're just going to be faster than you because they're committing to the board a lot faster, a lot more quickly, and they're just able to deal damage faster than you can fill your graveyard. Like that's just the premier aggro deck in the format. It's just it's gonna take you out every single time. Matt's I think loss in Swiss. I don't know what his first one was to, but his second was to Fire Aggro Xander. So I wouldn't be surprised if the first one was that as well. But yeah, I mean, you just can't compete. The water lists, you're kind of like a little worried about because they have disruption and a clock, and they have some bursts to finish you off like pretty quickly. So those are, I think, closer matchups. I don't know if it's favorable or unfavorable. I would say it's probably like closer to unfavorable as the erupting player. Like it's not something you want to sit down and see. Like if my opponent opens with Spirit of Water and then Lurking Assailant, I'm like, okay, we're gonna have a grind here. But yeah, I mean, like you want to see like just kind of like normie allies. Like you're totally cool seeing that all day. Like you'll stomp them. They just have no interaction. You love to see the Merlin decks. Like they're gonna just fold. But if someone comes down like probably like a Fire Diana as well, actually, that's also I think a pretty quick. It's got a really quick clock.
I think it depends on the build of Fire Diana, but yeah.
I mean, I think I don't actually know if that's true. I think a lot of the Fire Diana builds are fast enough; they're just gonna like wreck you. Even the ones that are going to 3, because they just turbo to 3 and then they hit you for a ton with a Shadow's Twin, right? So they hit you for 7, maybe more if they have like an incendiary bullet that they're using instead, incendiary shot, because that's going to have another 4 damage on top of that, and then you get Creeping Torments, and you're drawing a lot of cards as the erupting player.
Yeah.
So like you're just going to take a lot of damage pretty quick as well.
Yeah. No, that could be true.
So I think, ironically, I think fire is Erupting's worst enemy.
Well, it's a particular fire though, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
the ones that you pointed out were not what we typically think of as. This is the reason I said it depends a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Because the ones you all pointed out were ones that had win cons that were not ally based built into them. So Xander can push a ton of non-ally damage, non-attack damage. It's nuts. There's so many options. Merlin, Merlin's a good matchup, but that's because they're too slow typically. It's like you're just playing the same deck, but you go over the top of them.
Yep.
But the Fire Diana can just move into shooting you a whole bunch.
Yep.
Whereas if the deck is really focused on putting allies down, and doesn't have the kind of, this is where you pointed out like the water deck. I think the reason the water Lorraine is good against erupting is because they'll put down threats that you're going to need to do something about, typically if you're trying to go a little later. But they're also going to hold up Frostbind the whole time. So if you ever try to push for the win, you know they have it in hand. And if they just play their cards right, it's not like a crushing victory necessarily, but I think it's favorable. I think it's like a 60-40 in their favor.
Yeah. It might be a little closer than that, but I agree. Like Isaac, a couple of his losses were to erupting. So yeah, it just all kind of depends. Or no, I'm sorry. I think I missaid that. The Water Diana list lost to erupting. I don't know what Isaac's losses were to.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, agree. It's these decks that really are going to come at you from a different angle because yeah, you just don't have the flexibility to handle the non-ally damage options very well. Like I would imagine like Fire and Soul Lorraine is like pretty close, just because Lorraine has to get to 3 before she really pops off there. But like, I mean, that's just a lot of non-ally damage as well. And even just like more like other general Fire Lorraine builds are going to have a really good time just because you have Rending Flames, you have Fiery Momentum. A lot of your allies, you also don't mind going to the graveyard, depending on the deck too, because a lot of them have like you must actively want there to get the floating memory to help you level up more efficiently and quickly. So,
sure. I think like it also depends on if you're teching things like Resolute Stand, because that card can do a lot of work against some of those decks as well.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like overall, just really, really cool metagame here in Ontario. I was really excited to see it. Before we move on too far from erupting, I want to talk about Matt's sideboard deck because it was just cool as heck. I was very surprised to see a Dusklight Communion in the first place list of Ontario, but 3 of those and Elysian Astrolabe in the sideboard let you take care of Fractured Eyes Lanterns actually. So like even if you think you have it in the bag, you do not.
I mean, I think that is a good argument also for what I was saying earlier, that like he was ready, and I think the fact that he committed that much sideboard space to that, we can assume that a lot of testing was done against these water matchups, and he identified that he needed even still just a little bit extra to push over the top, but committing that sideboard space there and swapping them in meant that those matchups, there was a lot less that could actually stand in his way. It's going to come down to do they have the Frostbinds, and are they properly holding them for the right time? But the more they hold Frostbinds, the less they put pressure on. The less they put pressure on, the longer Merlin gets to go, and Merlin just naturally wins eventually.
But yeah, that was super, super cool to see.
It's great tech. It's like incredible.
Super smart. Yeah, this is the kind of metagame innovations we want to see. But yeah, wrapping up too, we're seeing a lot of repeat top 8ers here for Ascent. This is Caben's 3rd one. This is Jimmy's 2nd, I think, or because was Jimmy in? I don't know if I forget if Jimmy went to Auckland or not.
Jimmy's not in the top 8 of this.
Wait, what? Oh, I have this person's name wrong. Okay, I don't know. I'm sorry to whoever this person is. I don't have your name.
I'm looking at your meta document, and Jimmy is not listed here. So I don't know what's going on.
I'll have to figure out who it is. No. Eason Chen. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Eason. That's who this is. Eason Chen, repeat top 8. Sean Zhang, repeat top 8. Like, this is three of the top 8 from Houston is here. It's insane. And again, just like goes to show that you can, if you put in the work and kind of figure out the metagame, get your deck tested, figure out what your list is going to be, like you can consistently do well at these events. Like these aren't, I don't think these are outside of anybody's reach. You know, you just got to put the work in.
Yep. Grand Archive is a high skill game.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see that. You know, just again, if you got the dream of getting there, you can get there. So it's attainable. But I don't know. You have any final thoughts here, Dan, on Ontario? And you know, since you didn't get to participate firsthand.
Yeah, I was disappointed. You know, obviously excited about what I got to do for the weekend, but disappointed that I didn't get to go experience this kind of fresh meta firsthand, help the team more in testing. It's a, you know, it looked like a super exciting, super cool event. First big event with Omnidex, which is also really, really awesome.
That went
I just
really
want to point out,
super smooth, by the way. Like, we did not have any hiccups at all with that.
Omnidex
to my knowledge,
is
anyway.
Top tier. It's so good. I want to point out how cool it is that Cabin, player number 1 in the Omnidex, and Violet, player number 101 in the Omnidex, both were in the top 8 of this event. So it's nice. It's nice when everything works out like that.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, just congrats to all the top 8, everyone there. Obviously, made good calls, played well, had a killer performance, and I'm just excited. I'm excited to get to Nationals, to my next big Grand Archive event, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at Nationals and Worlds and recapping some of those events afterwards as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited for Nationals myself too. I'll be competing this time instead of judging. And yeah, I met a lot of really cool people at Ontario. A lot of people who said they were fans of the podcast as well. So, you know, if you see us at Nationals, feel free to say hi. It was a really good time in Ontario. I'm really looking forward to Nationals. But I think that pretty much wraps up our episode today, this week. So thank you very much for listening or watching. We'll see you again in 2 weeks with another episode of the Recollection Step. Where we'll be going over our Nationals experience. So kind of 2 really fun tournament report podcasts back to back. So,
yep.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.